Coffee splashed across Maxwell Reed's immaculate Armani suit, the dark liquid creating a Rorschach pattern against the pristine white shirt beneath. The boardroom fell silent. "I'm so sorry," Olivia Thorne stammered, her hands trembling as she frantically grabbed napkins from the credenza. "It was an accident. I didn't see you coming around the corner." Maxwell Reed, Boston's most eligible billionaire bachelor and CEO of Westwood Laboratories, stood perfectly still, his steel-gray eyes narrowing as he assessed the woman who had just ruined his $12,000 suit. At 34, he had built a reputation on cold precision and unwavering control. "Your first day, I presume?" His voice was low, measured. Olivia nodded, a flush creeping up her neck. "Yes, sir. R&D department." "Name?" "Olivia Thorne." A flicker of recognition crossed his face. The MIT graduate with the breakthrough paper on cellular regeneration. Surprised that he knew her work, Olivia straightened slightly. "Yes, that's me." Maxwell studied her for a moment longer than necessary, noting the intelligent eyes that met his gaze directly despite her embarrassment. A rare quality in his experience. "Dr. Harrison." He called to the older man who had entered behind him. "Ms. Thorne will be joining the Aurora Project instead." The entire room gasped. The Aurora Project was Westwood's most secretive and important initiative, and Maxwell Reed's personal obsession. "But sir," Dr. Harrison protested, "she hasn't been vetted for clearance." "I just vetted her." Maxwell buttoned his jacket over the stain. "My office, Ms. Thorne." 15 minutes. 14 minutes and 30 seconds later, Olivia knocked on the imposing mahogany door of the corner office. The sleek, minimalist design of Maxwell's sanctuary reflected his personality. Nothing unnecessary, everything purposeful. "Enter." She found him standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor, now wearing a fresh suit identical to the ruined one. "Do you know why you're here, Miss Thorne?" he asked without turning. "Because I spilled coffee on you, and you're either firing me personally or assigning me to janitorial duty?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips as he turned. Honesty. Refreshing. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "You're here because I read your dissertation. Your approach to enzyme manipulation and tissue regeneration is exactly what the Aurora Project needs." He sat across from her, sliding a thick folder across the polished surface. "Before you open that, understand something. Working directly with me comes with rules." "Rules?" "The Reed rules, as my executive team calls them." He ticked them off on his fingers. 1. Professional distance is maintained at all times. 2. Personal information remains personal. 3. All communication must pertain solely to the project. 4. Never question my decisions publicly. 5. What happens in this lab stays in this lab. Olivia swallowed. "That sounds more like a prison than a job." "It's how I maintain order, Miss Thorne. Order creates results." He leaned forward slightly. "The Aurora Project could save millions of lives. Is adhering to a few simple boundaries too high a price?" Their eyes locked, and Olivia felt something electric pass between them. "No, Mr. Reed. It's not too high." "Good. Now, the non-disclosure agreement." He pushed another document forward. "Sign it, and we begin tomorrow." As Olivia scanned the document, a tall man with a military bearing appeared at the door without knocking. "Mr. Reed, your father is on line 1. Maxwell's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Tell Lawrence I'm in a meeting, Elliot." He insisted it's urgent. "It always is." Maxwell's expression hardened. "Miss Thorne, this is Elliot Vance, head of security." "Elliot." "Miss Thorne is joining the Aurora team." Vance's eyes narrowed as he assessed Olivia with undisguised suspicion. "I'll need to run a full background check." "Already authorized," Maxwell replied coolly. After Vance departed, Olivia signed the agreement and stood to leave. "One more thing, Miss Thorne." Maxwell's voice stopped her at the door. "Why did you apply to Westwood specifically?" She turned, meeting his gaze directly. "Because you're doing work that matters, Mr. Reed. And I want my life to matter." Something unreadable flickered in his eyes. "Tomorrow, 7 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." As Olivia walked through the gleaming corridors of Westwood Laboratories toward her new future, she had no idea that she had just stepped into the most dangerous game of her life. One where breaking Maxwell Reed's rules would either destroy them both or heal wounds neither knew they carried. In her small apartment that evening, Olivia stared at the Aurora Project file, her mind spinning with the incredible opportunity and the enigmatic man behind it. What she couldn't know was that in his penthouse 20 stories above the city, Maxwell Reed was studying her background check, wondering if he had made a critical error in bringing Olivia Thorne into his carefully controlled world. 3 weeks into the Aurora project, Olivia found herself alone in the lab well past midnight. The blue glow of computer screens cast shadows across her face as she analyzed test results from their latest trial. The project, a revolutionary gene therapy that could potentially reverse cellular degeneration, was consuming her every waking hour. The lab door slid open with a soft hiss. Maxwell Reed entered, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, the closest thing to casual she'd ever seen him wear. "You're still here." It wasn't a question. The enzyme degradation rate wasn't matching our projections. Olivia tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I think I found the problem." Maxwell moved beside her, close enough that she caught the faint scent of his cologne. He studied her calculations on the screen, his shoulder nearly touching hers. "You've adjusted the cellular binding protocol." His voice held a note of approval. "Yes, the original framework wasn't accounting for the antioxidant interference." She pulled up a simulation. "Look what happens when we recalibrate the delivery mechanism." He finished, reaching past her to type a command. Their hands brushed, and Olivia felt an unexpected jolt of electricity. Maxwell withdrew his hand as if burned. "Rule 1, Ms. Thorne." His tone was clipped. "Professional distance." "You're the one who invaded my personal space, Mr. Reed," she countered. Their eyes met in the reflection of the computer screen, a charged moment of tension that neither acknowledged. Maxwell cleared his throat. "Run the new simulation overnight. I want results by morning." As he turned to leave, Olivia spotted something that made her pause. "Your coffee." Maxwell looked back at the steaming cup he'd placed on the counter. "What about it?" "Black with 1 sugar. Every day, the same." "Another one of your rules." A shadow crossed his face. "Habit, not rule." "There's a difference. Rules protect. Habits merely exist." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "Why are you really here, Miss Thorne?" "I told you, the enzyme degradation." "No." He turned, fixing her with his penetrating gaze. "Why Westwood? Why this project?" "A scientist of your caliber had options." Olivia considered deflecting, but opted for honesty. "Because what we're doing could help people who can't afford to wait for help. Like my mother couldn't." Something shifted in Maxwell's expression, a momentary crack in his armor. He nodded once and left without another word. The next morning, Olivia arrived to find Maxwell already in the lab, examining her overnight results. "Your modification works." He gestured to the simulation. "The cellular uptake has improved by 43%. "That's better than I expected," she admitted, surprised by his presence so early. "We're moving to phase 2 trials immediately." He handed her a tablet. "I've already informed the team." As she scrolled through his notes, Olivia noticed a photograph partially concealed beneath a folder on his desk. Maxwell with an identical man, both smiling widely. She'd never seen Maxwell smile like that. "Is that your brother?" The question slipped out before she could stop herself. Maxwell stiffened, quickly sliding the photo out of sight. "Rule 2, Ms. Thorne. Personal information remains personal." Before she could apologize, Elliot Vance entered the lab, his gaze settling on Olivia with thinly veiled suspicion. "Security breach in sector for last night," he announced. "Someone tried to access the Aurora servers." Maxwell's expression darkened. "Internal or external?" "Unclear. I've already informed Mr. Reed Sr." "My father doesn't need to be involved," Maxwell said sharply. "He disagrees." Vance handed him a phone. "He wants to speak with you. Now." While Maxwell stepped aside to take the call, Vance moved closer to Olivia. "Interesting hours you keep, Miss Thorne. Midnight to dawn, all alone with company secrets." "I was working on enzyme degradation rates," she replied evenly. "Feel free to check the logs." "Oh, I have." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I check everything." Maxwell returned, his expression thunderous. "Pack up the essential equipment," he ordered. "We're moving the project." "Moving where?" Olivia asked. "My research facility in Vermont. Remote, secure, and away from prying eyes." He fixed Vance with a cold stare. "Only essential personnel. That means my core team and minimal security." "Your father won't approve," Vance began. "I'm not asking for approval." Maxwell cut him off. "Miss Thorne, be ready to leave in 3 hours." After they departed, Olivia stayed behind, her mind racing. As she gathered her research notes, she caught sight of the photograph again. This time, she carefully slid it out. Two identical faces grinned back at her, Maxwell and his twin, arms slung over each other's shoulders against a mountain backdrop. On the back, someone had written, "Max and Nate, Green Mountains, last summer together." The handwriting was identical to Maxwell's, but the sentiment felt worlds away from the cold, controlled man she knew. She carefully returned the photo to its hiding place, a new question burning in her mind. What had happened to turn the smiling young man in that photo into Maxwell Reed and his unbreakable rules? Later that day, as their small convoy headed north toward the isolated research facility, Olivia watched the city fade behind them. Beside her in the back of the sleek black SUV, Maxwell worked silently on his laptop, an invisible wall between them that felt increasingly fragile with each passing mile. The Reed Research Facility emerged from the mist like a modernist's dream, glass and steel nestled organically among Vermont's Green Mountains. Snow had begun falling as their convoy wound up the private road, dusting the landscape in pristine white. "Welcome to the Mountain House," Maxwell said as they approached. It was the first thing he'd said directly to Olivia since their departure from Boston 6 hours earlier. "It's beautiful," she replied, taking in the structure that somehow managed to be both imposing and harmonious with its surroundings. "It's secure," he corrected. Beauty was incidental to the design. The facility was smaller than Westwood's Boston headquarters, but more advanced. Only 5 other researchers had made the trip, Maxwell's most trusted team members, along with 2 security personnel handpicked by Maxwell himself, pointedly excluding Elliot Vance. "Your quarters are in the East Wing," Maxwell informed Olivia as they entered the main atrium. "The lab is operational around the clock. We'll reconvene in 2 hours to establish our new protocols." Before she could respond, he was already striding away, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and tense. Dr. Sophia Lynn, the team's senior biochemist, appeared at Olivia's side. "Don't take it personally," she said quietly. "I've worked with Max for 5 years. I've never seen him this intense. Is it always like this with new projects?" Sophia glanced around before answering. "Aurora isn't just any project. It was Nathaniel's brainchild." "Nathaniel?" "His twin brother. Died about 7 years ago." Sophia's expression grew somber. "Car accident. Max doesn't talk about it, but it changed him. Before that, he was different." Olivia thought of the photograph, 2 identical smiles, a world away from Maxwell's current demeanor. Was Nathaniel a scientist too? The visionary of the two. Max was the businessman, Nathaniel the dreamer. Sophia checked her watch. "I shouldn't be telling you this. Rule 2 and all that." 2 hours later, the team gathered in the main laboratory. Maps of research data covered digital displays as Maxwell outlined their accelerated timeline. "We have 3 months to complete Phase 2 trials," he announced. "Given our recent security concerns, we'll operate on a closed system. No data leaves this facility." "That's an aggressive schedule," Dr. Richards, their statistical analyst, protested. "The protein synthesis alone is achievable," Olivia interjected, drawing all eyes to her. "If we modify the approach." Maxwell's gaze fixed on her. "Explain." Olivia moved to the central display, bringing up her models from the previous night. "Instead of sequential trials, we run parallel streams with complementary markers. It doubles our data points while reducing overall time." A charged silence followed her proposal. "It's unorthodox," Maxwell finally said. "But mathematically sound," she countered, meeting his gaze. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Implement it," he ordered, then addressed the team. "Adjust your protocols accordingly. We start immediately." For the next week, the team worked around the clock. Olivia frequently found herself alone in the lab with Maxwell during the midnight hours, both of them too driven to rest. Their conversation remained strictly professional, but something was shifting between them, a grudging respect evolving into something neither acknowledged. On the 8th night, a blizzard descended upon the mountains, howling winds battering the reinforced windows of the facility. Past midnight, as Olivia analyzed cellular response data, the lights flickered once, twice, then plunged the lab into darkness. Emergency generators hummed to life seconds later, but only essential systems restored: heat, security, and minimal lighting. The lab equipment remained dormant. Backup power prioritizes life support and security. Maxwell's voice came from the doorway, illuminated by the glow of his phone. The rest will be offline until the main grid returns. When will that be? Given the storm's severity, likely not until morning. He approached, setting a lantern on the workbench. We should conserve phone batteries. The landlines are down as well. Olivia nodded, suddenly aware of how isolated they truly were. Cut off from the world, enclosed in this glass and steel sanctuary with a man who remained largely a mystery. You should get some rest, Maxwell suggested. There's nothing more we can accomplish tonight. As if contradicting him, the temperature in the lab noticeably dropped. Maxwell frowned. The heating system is struggling. We should move to the residential wing. It has a fireplace. They walked in silence through the darkened corridors, their way lit only by Maxwell's lantern. The residential lounge was warm compared to the lab, a gas fireplace casting amber light across modern furnishings. Maxwell busied himself adjusting the fire while Olivia stood awkwardly, unsure of her place in this more intimate setting. The rules that governed their professional interaction seemed inadequate here. Sit, he finally said, gesturing to the sofa. There's no point in standing until dawn. He disappeared briefly, returning with 2 glasses and a bottle of scotch. To ward off the cold, he explained, pouring a modest amount in each. Olivia accepted the glass, surprised by this deviation from his rigid protocols. Is alcohol an exception to Rule 3? Maxwell considered the amber liquid in his glass. Extraordinary circumstances require flexibility. He settled into a chair opposite her. Even I recognize that. Do you? She challenged gently. Your rules seem deliberately inflexible. His eyes reflected the firelight as he studied her. Rules provide structure. Structure ensures safety. Safety from what? The question hung between them, more intimate than Olivia had intended. To her surprise, Maxwell didn't immediately shut down the conversation. Chaos, he finally said. Unpredictability. The human tendency toward complication. Is that what Nathaniel was? A complication? The words left her mouth before she could reconsider. Maxwell went perfectly still. For several heartbeats, Olivia was certain she'd crossed an unforgivable line. How do you know about my brother? His voice was dangerously quiet. Dr. Lin mentioned him, she admitted. And I saw the photograph. In the lab. She expected anger, a sharp reminder of Rule 2. Instead, Maxwell set down his glass and stared into the fire, his profile sharp against the dancing flames. Nathaniel was chaos personified, he said softly. Brilliant, impulsive, fearless, everything I'm not. Everything Aurora was supposed to be. The revelation hung in the air between them, a first crack in the carefully constructed wall between Maxwell Reed and the world. Outside, the storm raged on, snow piling against the windows, the winds howl a counterpoint to the crackling fire. Inside, a different kind of barrier began to weaken, as 2 people stranded by circumstance began to see each other in the light of shared vulnerabilities and unspoken possibilities. Morning light filtered through snow-dusted windows as Olivia woke, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. She was still in the residential lounge, a blanket carefully draped over her. The events of the night before came rushing back. The power outage, the fireplace, Maxwell's unexpected openness about his brother. Maxwell himself was nowhere to be seen. A note sat on the coffee table. Power restored. Lab operational. Mr. Back to business, then. Whatever glimpse of the man behind the rules she'd witnessed had vanished with the storm. In the lab, the team worked with renewed urgency. Days blurred together in a rhythm of experiments, analyses, and incremental breakthroughs. Olivia's parallel testing protocol was yielding promising results, accelerating their timeline beyond even Maxwell's ambitious projections. 2 weeks after the blizzard, Olivia was running a critical test sequence when the mass spectrometer readings suddenly spiked. She stared at the monitor, pulse quickening. Dr. Lin, she called. I need verification on these readings. Sophia hurried over, eyes widening as she examined the data. The cellular regeneration rate, it stabilized at 87%. That's unprecedented, Maxwell completed, appearing at Olivia's side. He developed an uncanny ability to materialize whenever significant developments occurred. The entire team gathered around the display, the importance of the moment evident in their stunned silence. The modified delivery mechanism works, Olivia explained, pulling up comparative charts. The targeted cells are accepting the therapy without degradation. We need to replicate this immediately, Maxwell ordered. But there was something different in his voice, a barely contained excitement breaking through his usual reserve. Hours later, after the third successful replication, Maxwell did something entirely unexpected. He ordered champagne. This achievement deserves acknowledgement, he announced as the team gathered in the lounge. You've accomplished in weeks what was projected to take months. As glasses were distributed, Maxwell raised his in Olivia's direction. To Ms. Thorne, whose unorthodox approach made this possible. The recognition sent warmth spreading through Olivia's chest, intensified by the rare smile that briefly transformed Maxwell's face. In that moment, he looked remarkably like the young man in the photograph with his brother. The celebration continued, the team's usual professional restraint loosened by success and champagne. Gradually, they drifted away until only Olivia and Maxwell remained. You didn't have to credit me, she said, leaning against the window overlooking snow-covered mountains. It was a team effort. I don't give credit where it isn't due, Maxwell replied, joining her at the window. False praise is manipulation. Is that another Reed rule? Perhaps it should be. His voice had softened, the rigid formality that typically characterized their interactions notably absent. Olivia turned to find him watching her, his gray eyes reflecting something she hadn't seen before. Admiration, certainly, but also something more complex. Why did you really bring me onto this project? She asked. The truth this time. Maxwell considered her for a long moment. Your research paper. It reminded me of Nathaniel's approach, intuitive leaps backed by rigorous methodology. He looked away. When you spilled that coffee, then stood your ground instead of cowering, I saw someone who might understand what Aurora is truly meant to be. Which is what? A legacy. Nathaniel's vision brought to life. His voice dropped, a way to ensure he didn't die for nothing. The raw honesty in his admission caught Olivia off guard. What do you mean, die for nothing? Maxwell's expression closed. It's getting late. Maxwell. She touched his arm, the first time she'd deliberately initiated contact. Please. He looked down at her hand, then back to her face. Something shifted in his eyes, a decision made. The accident that killed Nathaniel happened the day after he threatened to expose irregularities in Westwood's clinical trials. Trials my father was overseeing. Olivia's breath caught. You think your father was involved? I think nothing happens in my father's vicinity by accident. His jaw tightened, but I could never prove it. The weight of his suspicion hung between them. Impulsively, Olivia squeezed his arm, offering what comfort she could. Maxwell glanced down at her hand again, then slowly, deliberately, covered it with his own. Time seemed to suspend as they stood connected by that simple touch, rules temporarily forgotten. Maxwell's gaze dropped to her lips, his body inclining toward hers almost imperceptibly. For a breathless moment, Olivia thought he might kiss her. Instead, he abruptly stepped back, hand falling away. Rule 1, he said hoarsely. Professional distance. Is that really what you want right now? The question lingered between them, charged with possibility. What I want is irrelevant, he replied, retreating behind his walls. What matters is the project. The project or your rules? Olivia challenged, stung by his withdrawal. They're one and the same. His voice hardened. Good night, Ms. Thorne. Frustrated and confused, Olivia decided to return to her quarters. On her way, she passed Maxwell's private office. The door stood slightly ajar, unusual for a man so protective of his boundaries. She hesitated, then pushed it open. Maxwell. The office was empty but for the soft glow of his computer. On his desk lay scattered files, printouts of accident reports, newspaper clippings about Nathaniel's death, and photographs of damaged vehicle components. As she turned to leave, a folder labeled Restricted, LRIs only caught her attention. Inside were encrypted documents with technical designations unfamiliar to her, except for one word that appeared repeatedly, Aurora. Heart racing, she quickly photographed several pages with her phone before carefully replacing the folder. Whatever Maxwell suspected about his father and Nathaniel's death, these documents might contain evidence. She was about to leave when Maxwell appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Looking for me? His tone was dangerously calm. "Ah, yes," she stammered. "About earlier." Earlier was a mistake. He entered the office, eyes tracking to the desk, noting the slightly displaced folder. "One I won't repeat." "These documents," Olivia said, deciding direct confrontation was her only option. "They're related to Aurora, before your brother died." Maxwell went still. "You went through my files." "The door was open," she explained. "But Maxwell, if these could prove what happened to Nathaniel." "Get out." His voice was ice. "No." She stood her ground. "You brought me into this project. If there's something dangerous happening, if your father is involved, I deserve to know." They faced each other in tense silence until Maxwell finally spoke. "My father would destroy anyone who threatened his control," he said quietly. "Even his own son." The admission cost him visibly, a crack in the armor he'd built around himself. "Let me help you," Olivia offered, stepping closer. "We can decode these files together." Something shifted in Maxwell's expression, vulnerability wrestling with ingrained caution. "Why would you risk it?" "Because I believe in Aurora," she replied. "And because," she added more softly, "I'm starting to believe in you." The confession hung between them, changing everything. This time, when Maxwell moved toward her, he didn't stop. His kiss was tentative at first, then deepening as Olivia responded, her hands finding his shoulders, his arms encircling her waist. Years of control gave way to a moment of complete surrender as the last rule between them shattered. When they finally separated, breathless, Maxwell rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since you challenged me in that board meeting," he admitted. "Rule 1, she reminded him with a small smile. "Rules," he murmured, "can be rewritten." Outside, snow began falling again, shrouding the mountain in silent white, while inside, two people who had found each other against all odds faced the dangerous truth they would now confront together. The return to Boston carried a different tension than their departure weeks before. In the confines of the corporate jet, Maxwell and Olivia maintained a careful professional distance, but stolen glances betrayed the shift in their relationship. "We keep this private," Maxwell had instructed before their departure from Vermont. "My father has eyes everywhere." Now, as they drove from the airport to Westwood Laboratories, Olivia studied Maxwell's profile. His jaw was set, eyes focused on the road ahead. The vulnerable man from the mountains once again concealed beneath the corporate armor. "The Gallatinite," she began. "Do you still want me there?" "Yes. It's the perfect cover for what we're really doing." He glanced at her briefly. "Lawrence will be watching me closely, not my newest researcher analyzing data in the background." The Westwood Annual Charity Gala was the company's most prestigious event, drawing Boston's elite and generating millions for medical research, all while showcasing the Reed family's philanthropic image. This year, it would serve a different purpose. "I've moved the encrypted files to a secure server," Maxwell continued. "You'll access them from a terminal in the research library. Everyone will assume you're preparing for your presentation next week. And you'll keep your father distracted? I've had years of practice." His tone was dry. At Westwood, they separated, Maxwell to meetings, Olivia to the lab, where she immediately began working on the encrypted documents she'd photographed at the mountain facility. Hours later, she stared at her screen in disbelief. The encryption had been complex, but her background in computational biology had given her an unexpected advantage. What she'd uncovered was stunning. Aurora had indeed been Nathaniel Reed's creation, but with a crucial difference from its current implementation. Nathaniel's original design wasn't just a treatment for cellular degeneration. It was meant to be universally accessible, affordable medication for autoimmune diseases. The current Aurora project had been modified, apparently by Lawrence Reed, to create an exclusive, astronomically expensive therapy targeting wealthy clients. "Oh my God," Olivia whispered, downloading the decrypted files to a secure drive. This wasn't just corporate greed. It was a complete corruption of Nathaniel's vision. A shadow fell across her desk. She looked up to find Elliot Vance watching her with calculated interest. "Working late, Miss Thorne?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "The gala starts in an hour." "Just finishing up," she replied, casually minimizing her screen. "Interesting work?" He moved closer, gaze flicking to her computer. "Just routine analysis." She stood, blocking his view. "If you'll excuse me, I need to change for the event." Vance didn't move. "You and Mr. Reed seemed quite..." productive in Vermont. The implication hung in the air between them. The entire team was productive, she replied evenly. That's why Mr. Reed selected us. Indeed. Vance finally stepped aside. Mr. Reed Sr. is looking forward to meeting you tonight. He's quite curious about the woman who's captured so much of his son's attention. The warning was clear. Lawrence Reed was watching. The gala transformed Westwood's austere lobby into a glittering spectacle of wealth and influence. Wearing a borrowed midnight blue gown, Olivia navigated the crowd with nervous determination, the encrypted drive safely tucked into her small clutch. She spotted Maxwell across the room, impeccable in a tuxedo, engaged in conversation with an older, distinguished man she recognized from company photos, Lawrence Reed. Even from a distance, the resemblance between father and son was striking, though Lawrence's features carried a hardness that made Maxwell's reserve seem warm by comparison. As she made her way toward the research library, a glass of champagne in hand as cover, Maxwell's eyes briefly met hers, a silent acknowledgement of their plan. The library was mercifully empty. Olivia quickly accessed a terminal, inserted her drive, and began transferring the decrypted files to Maxwell's secure server. As the progress bar crept forward, she scanned the documents more thoroughly. One email exchange between Lawrence and an unnamed board member sent a chill down her spine. N refuses to drop his ridiculous affordable access crusade. Claims he'll take it public if we don't reconsider. Needs reminding where his loyalties should lie. The response, handle it. Too much invested to let idealism interfere. M will be easier to control once he's alone at the helm. The timestamp was 3 days before Nathaniel's fatal accident. The file transfer completed with a soft chime. Olivia pocketed the drive and turned to leave, only to find Lawrence Reed standing in the doorway. Miss Thorne, I presume. His voice was smooth, cultured, and utterly cold. Working during a party? How dedicated. Mr. Reed. She forced a smile. Just checking some figures before my presentation next week. Of course. He entered the library, effectively trapping her between the desk and his imposing presence. I've heard much about you. The brilliant mind from modest beginnings. Something in his tone made her skin crawl. Maxwell has always had an eye for talent, he continued, though sometimes his judgment can be compromised. I'm not sure what you mean. Lawrence smiled thinly. Tell me, Miss Thorne, does the name Thomas Thorne mean anything to you? The question struck like a physical blow. Thomas Thorne, her father's name. My father, she admitted, seeing no point in denial. Yes, your father. Convicted of embezzlement and fraud 7 years ago. Charges related to a pharmaceutical subsidiary. How interesting that his daughter should end up working for the very company his crimes targeted. Olivia's mind raced. Her father had always maintained his innocence, claiming he'd been framed after questioning accounting irregularities. The timeline suddenly clicked 7 years ago, around the time of Nathaniel's death. My father was innocent, she said firmly. The courts disagreed. Lawrence stepped closer. What I find curious is that Maxwell seems unaware of this connection. An oversight in his typically thorough vetting process, perhaps, or deliberate concealment on your part. Before she could respond, a new voice entered the conversation. She was thoroughly vetted, father. Maxwell stood in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral though his eyes burned with contained fury. Maxwell. Lawrence turned, unfazed. I was just getting acquainted with your protégé. Did you know her father was convicted of trying to defraud us? I know her father was convicted in a case involving Westwood Pharmaceuticals. Maxwell replied evenly. I also know the evidence was circumstantial at best. The revelation stunned Olivia. He had known all along. And you still brought her into Aurora? Lawrence's voice held genuine surprise. I hire based on talent, not family history. Maxwell moved further into the room. Miss Thorne, would you excuse us? My father and I need to discuss something. Actually, Lawrence interjected. I'd like Elliot to escort Miss Thorne to my office. We have more to discuss. As if on cue, Vance appeared in the doorway. Sir, take Miss Thorne to my office and wait with her. Maxwell's face hardened. That's unnecessary. It's quite necessary. Lawrence cut him off. Especially after what Elliot discovered on Ms. Thorne's computer earlier today. Vance stepped forward, producing a tablet displaying surveillance footage of Olivia working on the encrypted files. Maxwell's expression remained unchanged, but Olivia saw the slight tensing of his jaw. the only indication of his concern. It seems your protege has been accessing restricted files, Lawrence continued. Files related to Nathaniel's work. Files you don't have clearance for either, Maxwell. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Elliot, Lawrence instructed, please ensure Ms. Thorne reaches my office safely. Maxwell and I will join shortly. As Vance gripped her elbow firmly, Olivia caught Maxwell's eye, seeing the silent message there, play along. While being escorted through the crowded gala, Olivia's mind worked frantically. The encrypted files. Thomas Thorne, Nathaniel Reed, all connected somehow, with Lawrence Reed at the center. You should have stayed in your lane, Vance muttered as they entered the executive elevator. Some secrets aren't worth uncovering. Like what really happened to Nathaniel Reed? She challenged. Vance's eyes narrowed. I'd be very careful with accusations, Miss Thorne. People who push too hard tend to meet unfortunate ends. The threat hung in the air as the elevator climbed toward Lawrence Reed's office, and whatever reckoning awaited her there. Lawrence Reed's office occupied the entire top floor of Westwood Laboratories, a modernist throne room overlooking Boston. Vance directed Olivia to a chair facing the massive desk, then positioned himself by the door, arms crossed. Do you understand the trouble you're in? He asked, eyes cold. I understand more than you think, Olivia replied, mind racing to formulate a plan. The encrypted drive felt heavy in her clutch. Mr. Reed doesn't tolerate corporate espionage. Is that what it's called when you uncover murder? Vance's expression flickered, surprise, then calculation. You're desperate. Making wild accusations won't help you. 30 minutes passed in tense silence before the elevator chimed. Maxwell entered alone, his face a mask of controlled fury. Where's my father? Vance asked, immediately alert. Still downstairs. Leave us. Maxwell's tone left no room for argument. Sir, your father instructed me. I don't care. Get out. When Vance hesitated, Maxwell stepped closer. Now, Elliot, before I have security remove you. After a tense standoff, Vance reluctantly departed. The moment the elevator doors closed, Maxwell's posture changed. We have 3 minutes before he calls my father, he said, voice low and urgent. Did you complete the file transfer? Olivia nodded. Yes, but Maxwell, your father knows who I am, who my father is. I've always known Olivia. He moved to the windows, checking that they were alone. Your father was convicted the same month Nathaniel died. Both had questioned irregularities in the same subsidiary. The connection wasn't hard to make. Yet you hired me anyway? I hired you because you're brilliant, he said simply. And because I hoped you might help me find the truth. I just never intended for you to become a target. His admission struck Olivia like a physical blow. You used me. Maxwell turned, his expression pained. Initially, yes. But everything changed in Vermont. What happened between us, that was real. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. My father's on his way up. He handed her a key card. Take the executive elevator to the parking garage. My driver is waiting, blue Tesla, level 2. Go to your apartment, pack essentials, and check into the Beacon Hill Hotel under the name Sarah Clark. I'll contact you when it's safe. You want me to run? Disbelief colored her voice. I want you to be safe while I deal with my father. His voice softened. Please, Olivia. The elevator chimed again. Go, Maxwell urged, moving to intercept his father. Olivia slipped out through a secondary door just as Lawrence Reed entered, Vance close behind. The drive to her apartment was a blur of racing thoughts and churning emotions. Had everything been a manipulation? The connection they'd formed in Vermont, the kiss they'd shared, was it all part of Maxwell's plan to uncover his brother's killer? Her apartment door was unlocked. Instantly alert, Olivia pushed it open cautiously to find her living space in disarray, drawers emptied, books scattered, computer missing. Someone had been searching for something. The encrypted drive felt suddenly heavier in her purse. Moving quickly, she packed a small bag, then froze at the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Without thinking, she ducked into her bathroom, closing the door silently just as her apartment door opened again. She's not here, a male voice reported. But someone's been back recently. Search everything again, came the reply, Vance's voice. Lawrence wants those files. Heart pounding, Olivia eased open the bathroom window that led to the fire escape. As voices continued in her living room, she slipped outside into the cold night air. 2 hours later, safely checked into the Beacon Hill Hotel under Maxwell's suggested alias. Olivia spread her findings across the bed. The decrypted documents revealed a disturbing picture. Nathaniel had discovered Lawrence was conducting unauthorized human trials of experimental drugs in developing countries, bypassing FDA regulations to fast-track approval and maximize profits. When Nathaniel threatened to expose this, Lawrence had apparently arranged his accident. He'd then repurposed Aurora, transforming Nathaniel's vision of accessible medicine into an exclusive, high-profit treatment available only to the wealthy. Even more damning, one document suggested Lawrence had framed Thomas Thorne when he discovered accounting irregularities that would have exposed the illegal trials. 3 days passed with no word from Maxwell. Olivia's calls went straight to voicemail. News outlets reported Maxwell Reed had taken an unexpected leave of absence from Westwood, with Lawrence Reed temporarily resuming CO duties. On the fourth morning, Olivia's burner phone, purchased after checking into the hotel, rang. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Ms. Thorne." The voice belonged to Dr. Sophia Lynn. "Don't hang up. I'm calling about Maxwell. Is he all right?" "No," Sophia replied grimly. "After you left, there was a confrontation. Maxwell was removed from the company, forcibly. Lawrence is claiming he had a breakdown. That's impossible. Maxwell would never. Listen to me." Sophia cut in. "The Aurora project has been completely restructured. The team's been disbanded. They're saying it was Maxwell's project alone, that he falsified results." Cold dread settled in Olivia's stomach. "They're erasing him." "Exactly. And you're next. Vance has been questioning everyone about your relationship, your access to files. He keeps mentioning corporate espionage charges. I need to talk to Maxwell. That's why I'm calling." Sophia lowered her voice. "He managed to contact me. He wants to meet you tonight. Dock 7, Boston Harbor, 9 p.m. The setup felt wrong, but what choice did she have? "I'll be there." "Be careful, Olivia. Something's very wrong at Westwood." Darkness had fallen by the time Olivia approached the harbor, staying in the shadows, constantly checking for surveillance. Dock 7 was deserted except for a single figure standing at the far end. Maxwell. Relief flooded through her as she approached, until the figure turned. Not Maxwell, but Elliot Vance. "Ms. Thorne." His smile was cold. So predictable. "Where's Maxwell?" she demanded, backing away. Indisposed. He advanced slowly. "But Lawrence would like that drive you stole." "I don't have it." "I think you do." From the shadows behind her, 2 men appeared. "And we're going to find it." Olivia turned to run, but strong hands gripped her arms. She struggled, managing to break free momentarily before something struck her head from behind. As consciousness faded, her last thought was of Maxwell and whether she would ever see him again. She awoke in darkness, head throbbing. Gradually, her eyes adjusted to reveal an abandoned laboratory space. Outdated equipment covered in dust, walls stained with age. "The old Westwood Research Facility," came a voice from the shadows. Lawrence Reed stepped into view. "Before we built our gleaming tower. Rather fitting to end things where they began." "Where's Maxwell?" Olivia demanded, testing the restraints binding her to a chair. "My son is no longer your concern." Lawrence circled her slowly. "Your concern is telling me where you've hidden those files." "Why? So you can destroy evidence that you killed your own son? That you framed my father?" A flicker of surprise crossed Lawrence's face. "You've been thorough, more than Maxwell ever was. He knows everything now, and can prove nothing." Lawrence leaned closer. "Just as you can't. Now the drive. I sent copies to multiple sources," she bluffed. "Anything happens to me, they go public." Lawrence studied her, then laughed softly. "You really are as I was warned. Too clever for your own good." He straightened. "Elliot, she needs more persuasion. I have a board meeting to attend. The one where we officially remove Maxwell from all company positions. Call me when she talks." As Lawrence departed, Vance approached with a malevolent smile. "Let's start with something simple. The password to your encrypted cloud storage." Miles away, in his penthouse apartment, Maxwell Reed sat surrounded by screens displaying Westwood's security feeds, financial records, and email exchanges. With him was Westwood's young IT specialist, Ryan Chun, who had been loyal to Maxwell since he'd protected the young man from Lawrence's wrath years earlier. "There's nothing in the security logs," Ryan reported. "It's like she disappeared." Maxwell's jaw tightened. Track Vance's GPS. He has access to facilities that don't appear in official records. As Ryan worked, Maxwell's phone rang, an unknown number. Mr. Reed, a tentative female voice. This is Melissa from reception. I think I saw something you should know about. The night Ms. Thorne disappeared, I was working late. I saw Mr. Vance escorting her to a car. She looked unconscious. Maxwell's blood ran cold. Did you see where they went? No, but I heard Mr. Vance mention the original site to the driver. The original site. The old laboratory where Westwood began, where Nathaniel had conducted his initial Aurora research. Got him, Ryan exclaimed. Vance's security badge was used at the old Charlestown facility an hour ago. Maxwell was already moving. Send me the coordinates. And Ryan, send those files to the FBI contact. It's time. As he armed himself and prepared to find Olivia, Maxwell reflected on how completely his life had changed in the weeks since she'd spilled coffee on his suit. His carefully constructed rules, his controlled existence, all shattered by a woman brave enough to question everything, including him. Now she was in danger because of him, because of secrets that had festered too long in his family's empire. Whatever happened tonight, the truth would finally emerge from the shadows, and Maxwell Reed's rules would be rewritten forever. The old Westwood facility loomed against the night sky, a relic of industrial architecture abandoned for sleeker, more modern spaces. Maxwell approached cautiously, disabling the rudimentary security system with codes only a Reed would know. Inside, the musty scent of neglect hung in the air. Following the soft glow of light from the main laboratory, Maxwell moved silently through corridors that had once been the birthplace of his family's empire. Voices echoed from ahead. One he recognized as Vance's, the other, Olivia's, strained but defiant. Your loyalty is misplaced, Vance was saying. Lawrence Reed built Westwood from nothing. Maxwell is destroying his legacy with this humanitarian nonsense. You mean Nathaniel's legacy, Olivia countered. The legacy Lawrence killed him to suppress. The sharp sound of a slap cut through the air. Maxwell's grip tightened on his weapon. I'm tired of asking nicely, Vance growled. The drive. Now. Maxwell reached the laboratory doorway, taking in the scene in an instant. Olivia bound to a chair, a thin line of blood trailing from her split lip, Vance looming over her, while two security guards stood watch. Step away from her, Elliot. All heads turned toward Maxwell, standing in the doorway, gun trained on Vance. Maxwell. Vance recovered quickly, signaling subtly to his men. Your father will be disappointed. Again. My father's disappointment is a familiar companion. Maxwell moved into the room, eyes briefly meeting Olivia's. Unlike yours, which will be brief but intense. Vance smirked. 3 against 1, Maxwell. Not even a Reed can overcome those odds. He's not alone. The new voice came from behind Maxwell as FBI agents filed into the laboratory, weapons drawn. FBI. Hands where we can see them. Vance's men surrendered immediately, but Vance himself lunged toward Olivia, pressing a blade to her throat. Back off or she dies. Everything froze. In that crystallized moment, Maxwell saw Olivia's eyes, not frightened, but determined, trusting him even now. It's over, Elliot, Maxwell said quietly. The files have been sent to the Justice Department. Lawrence's offshore accounts have been frozen. There's nowhere to run. Your father will destroy you for this, Vance snarled. My father destroyed me the day he killed my brother. The laboratory doors burst open again. Lawrence Reed entered, flanked by his personal security team, his face a mask of cold fury. Stand down, Elliot, he commanded. Vance hesitated, then stepped away from Olivia. Maxwell immediately moved to her side, cutting her restraints. Are you all right? He asked softly. She nodded, eyes fixed on Lawrence. I'm fine. Lawrence surveyed the scene with clinical detachment, ignoring the FBI agents. Maxwell, always the dramatic one. What exactly do you hope to accomplish here? Justice, Maxwell replied, helping Olivia to her feet. For Nathaniel. For Thomas Thorne. For everyone you've sacrificed to your ambition. Lawrence's laugh was hollow. Justice? There is no justice in business, only victory and defeat. His gaze hardened. I gave you everything, groomed you to lead an empire, and you throw it away for what? Some misguided crusade? Your brother's naive idealism. I'm not throwing anything away, Maxwell countered. I'm reclaiming what you corrupted. Aurora was never meant to be a luxury for the elite. It was Nathaniel's gift to humanity. Nathaniel was weak, Lawrence spat. Sentimental. He would have destroyed everything I built with his ridiculous notion of accessible healthcare. So you had him killed. The words hung in the air, finally spoken aloud. Lawrence's expression didn't change. I protected our legacy. The car was meant to malfunction gradually. Give him time to reconsider his position. The cliff was unfortunate timing. The clinical admission stunned even the FBI agents. Olivia gripped Maxwell's arm as Lawrence continued. You could have been extraordinary, Maxwell. Instead, you'll be remembered as the Reed who destroyed his birthright. No, Maxwell replied, his voice steady. I'll be remembered as the Reed who honored his brother's vision. Lawrence's eyes narrowed. You think this ends here? Westwood is mine. It will always be mine. Lawrence Reed, the FBI agent in charge, stepped forward. You're under arrest for conspiracy, corporate fraud, and suspicion of murder. As agents moved to apprehend Lawrence, he locked eyes with Maxwell one final time. She'll never replace what you've lost today. The Reed empire dies with me. Maxwell watched him passively as his father was led away, ending a reign of corruption that had cost so many lives. It's really over, Olivia whispered beside him. Maxwell pulled her close, kissing her forehead gently. No, he murmured. It's just beginning. Outside, dawn broke over Boston Harbor as emergency vehicles and FBI teams processed the scene. Maxwell and Olivia sat together on an ambulance bumper, her injuries being treated. I thought you might have been part of it, she admitted. When I discovered you knew about my father all along. I almost lost you because of my family's secrets, Maxwell replied. I won't make that mistake again. As the rising sun painted the sky in shades of promise, Maxwell Reed realized that his carefully constructed rules had not protected him. They had imprisoned him. And the woman beside him, who had broken every one of them, had finally set him free. 6 months later, spring had transformed the Vermont mountains surrounding the Reed Research Facility. What had once been Maxwell's isolated refuge was now a bustling center of collaborative innovation, its glass walls reflecting the vibrant green landscape. Olivia stood on the observation deck, watching researchers move purposefully through the main atrium below. Scientists from around the world now worked side by side in what had been rebranded as the Nathaniel Reed Institute for Accessible Medicine. Thinking about how much has changed, Maxwell's voice came from behind her as he approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. It's hard not to, she replied, accepting the cup with a smile. 6 months ago, this place was a fortress. Now it's the most transparent research facility in the country. The transformation extended far beyond architecture. Following Lawrence Reed's arrest and subsequent trial, where he received a 30-year sentence for crimes including conspiracy to commit murder, Maxwell had completely restructured Westwood Laboratories. The Aurora project had been fast-tracked for global distribution at minimal cost, just as Nathaniel had originally intended. The Phase 3 results came in this morning, Maxwell said, joining her at the railing. Cellular regeneration is holding at 92% across all test groups, which means we can begin widespread clinical trials next month. Olivia finished. There's scientific synchronicity as natural as breathing now. Maxwell nodded, his expression thoughtful. Thomas called earlier. The presidential pardon came through officially. His record is completely expunged. Olivia's eyes welled with tears. 3 months earlier, Maxwell had personally petitioned the White House to review her father's case. With the evidence recovered from Lawrence Reed's files, Thomas Thorne's innocence had been definitively established. He asked about you, she said, blinking back emotion. He's looking forward to finally meeting the infamous Maxwell Reed at dinner next week. Maxwell looked momentarily apprehensive. Do reformed corporate tyrants generally make good impressions on fathers? She laughed, the sound carrying across the observation deck. You'll be fine. Just don't bring up your old rules. Ah, yes. The infamous Reed rules. His lips quirked in a self-deprecating smile. Not my finest creation. I don't know, she teased. Rule 1 had its moments. Professional distance at all times was particularly effective. Maxwell's arm slipped around her waist, pulling her closer. Spectacular failure, that one. Their relationship had developed slowly after the confrontation with Lawrence. Maxwell had insisted on giving Olivia space to determine if what had grown between them was real or merely the product of their intense circumstances. 3 months of careful courtship followed. Dinners, conversations that lasted into the early hours, a gradual rebuilding of trust. "I have something to show you," Maxwell said, taking her hand. "If you can spare an hour." He led her to a waiting helicopter, piloting it himself over the verdant mountainside. 20 minutes later, they landed in a wildflower-dotted clearing near a crystalline alpine lake where a simple wooden cabin stood. "What is this place?" Olivia asked as they approached. "Nathaniel built it." Maxwell's voice held reverence. "Our secret hideaway from Lawrence's expectations. This is where Aurora was born, on a napkin, over whiskey and wild ideas." Inside, the cabin was rustic yet comfortable, all natural wood and large windows framing spectacular mountain views. Photos of the Reed twins covered one wall, laughing, hiking, celebrating milestones. "I've never brought anyone here," Maxwell admitted. "Not even after he died." Olivia squeezed his hand. "Thank you for sharing it with me." Maxwell led her to the cabin's wide porch overlooking the lake. The afternoon sun cast golden light across the water as they settled into Adirondack chairs. "When I first hired you," Maxwell began, "I believed control was the path to success. Rules protected us from chaos, from betrayal, from pain." He turned to her. "You showed me how wrong I was." "Not entirely," she countered. "Some boundaries are healthy. You just built walls instead." "Exactly." He reached into his pocket. "Which is why I've been thinking about new rules." From his pocket, he produced a small wooden box, handcrafted, with intricate carvings. "Nathaniel made this," he explained. "Said someday I'd know what to put in it." With steady hands, he opened the box, revealing a platinum ring with a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds. Olivia's breath caught as Maxwell slid from his chair to one knee before her. "Olivia Thorne," he said, voice filled with emotion. "I spent years creating rules that kept people away. Now I'm proposing just one rule that would keep us together." He offered the ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "Yes," she finally managed. "Yes, I will." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, she asked, "What's the rule?" Maxwell smiled, drawing her into his arms. "Love without reservation. Trust without condition. Fight for what matters, together." "That's 3 rules," she pointed out, laughing through tears. "I've never been good at following rules anyway," he murmured before kissing her. 3 months later, they returned to the cabin for a small, intimate wedding. The Nathaniel Reed Institute had begun distributing Aurora treatments globally, with sliding scale pricing that made it accessible to patients regardless of economic status. Thomas Thorne, fully exonerated and now heading the Institute's ethics committee, walked his daughter down the aisle. Sophia Lynn and the original Aurora team served as witnesses as Maxwell and Olivia exchanged vows beside the lake. That evening, as celebration continued around them, Maxwell led his new wife away from the gathering to a quiet spot overlooking the sunset-painted mountains. "Something arrived this morning," he said, handing her an envelope bearing an official seal. Inside was confirmation that the Nathaniel Reed Foundation had been approved, a scholarship program for brilliant students from disadvantaged backgrounds to pursue careers in medical research. "The first class starts next fall," Maxwell explained. 20 students who might change the world, just like Nathaniel wanted to. Olivia smiled, laying her head against his shoulder. "He'd be proud of you." "Of us," Maxwell corrected, his hand gently resting on her stomach where their child, a boy they planned to name Nathan Thomas Reed, had just begun to grow. As darkness fell and stars appeared above the mountains, Maxwell Reed reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The rigid, rule-bound man who had once hired Olivia Thorne to help unlock his brother's secrets had been transformed by love, by truth, by the courage to be vulnerable. His father had been wrong. The Reed legacy hadn't died. It had been reborn, just like Aurora, into something more powerful than wealth or control could ever be. The legacy of healing, of second chances, of rules rewritten by love. "What are you thinking?" Olivia asked, noticing his pensive expression. Maxwell smiled, drawing her closer. "That sometimes breaking all the rules is the only way to find what truly matters." In the Vermont mountains where 2 brothers had once dreamed of changing the world, a new future was taking root, not governed by the cold Reed rules of distance and control, but by the warmth of connection, the strength of truth, and the power of love without reservation. 5 years after their wedding at the cabin, Maxwell and Olivia Reed stood hand in hand on the newly constructed observation platform of the Nathaniel Reed Institute's expanded campus. Below them, doctors from across the globe attended the annual Aurora Summit, where the latest advancements in accessible medicine were shared freely, a concept that would have been unthinkable in Lawrence Reed's era. "Daddy, look." 4-year-old Nathan tugged at Maxwell's pant leg, pointing at the helicopter landing on the pad below. His dark hair and steel-gray eyes mirrored his father's, but his uninhibited enthusiasm was all his own, a quality Maxwell cherished. "That's Dr. Abernathy from South Africa," Maxwell explained, lifting his son for a better view. "She's implementing Aurora treatments in rural communities." Beside them, Olivia adjusted the blanket around their 3-month-old daughter, Eliza, sleeping peacefully in her arms. "Your uncle would have loved this," she said softly to Nathan. "All these brilliant minds working together, no secrets, no barriers." Maxwell nodded, his throat tightening with emotion he no longer tried to conceal. "He would have," he agreed, placing a gentle hand on his daughter's head. The Westwood name had been retired when Lawrence Reed began serving his sentence. In its place, the Nathan Reed Foundation had grown to become the world's leading innovator in accessible medical solutions. Maxwell had transformed his inheritance into a force for good, while Thomas Thorne, now fully exonerated, headed the Institute's Global Ethics Committee. "The presentation starts in 10 minutes, Sophia Lynn reminded them as she joined them on the platform. Now the Institute's research director, she smiled at Nathan. "Ready for your big debut, little man?" Nathan nodded solemnly. As part of the opening ceremony, he would help unveil a statue of his namesake in the Institute's central courtyard. As they made their way down, Maxwell reflected on the remarkable journey from that first coffee spill in the boardroom. His father's empire had been built on control, secrets, and rigid rules. The institute that replaced it thrived on transparency, collaboration, and the freedom to question everything. Principles Olivia had taught him through her fearless challenging of his every barrier. In the courtyard, before hundreds of the world's leading medical minds, Nathan Reed pulled the cord that unveiled his uncle's statue. Applause echoed across the campus as Maxwell stepped forward to the podium, Olivia at his side. "My brother believed that healing shouldn't be a privilege," he began, his voice steady and clear. "He believed that the true measure of scientific achievement isn't profit, but impact." Looking out at the assembled faces, then back at his family, Maxwell felt a profound sense of rightness. The Reed legacy had not ended as his father predicted. It had transformed into something far more powerful than wealth or control could ever be. "Welcome to a world without barriers," he concluded, "where the only rule that matters is the one my wife taught me, that love, truth, and courage can rewrite any story, even one that begins with all the wrong rules."